So let's take a look at what you guys already know. All right, taking a look at the results. It looks like most of you guys have an average idea of what balanced assessments are. And when you take a look at the significance of the different types of formative assessment, not just formative assessment, the different types of assessments, we're going to be going through this in a little bit more depth as we go through it, but you can see formative assessment and benchmark assessments is, in your perception, the most important types.
So we asked the question, what is balanced assessment? And this tells us a little bit about the three different types that we asked you to rate. And starting at the bottom here, it tells you, it goes from bottom up. And in the bottom there, it shows our formative assessments, and those are the ones you're doing more often in your classroom. They're flexible, open, used for actionable feedback, things you could use in your classroom when you give a test or an exit ticket. Then as you move up, the middle section there is your the benchmark assessments that you give. So most of us use STAR in our districts, and we use that for math and reading in the fall, winter, and the spring to assess how the kids are doing and use that data to improve our teaching and learning. All of this data should be used to guide our instruction. And then the one at the top is the summative assessment, which is benchmarked to college and career readiness. So that's a large scale assessment that we use, usually just once a year for in the fall or the spring. That's your ITBS, your ACT, or the Wisconsin Forward. In our 712 school, we do both the Wisconsin Forward and the ACT. Next one. And then this tells us another one about the balanced assessment program, and it's supposed to be ongoing. We want to be assessing our students regularly, and again, that helps us drive our instruction. We should be using that data to help plan our lessons and work with our students in the classroom. There's different types: the selected response, constructive responses, performance tasks, and scaffolded items, which we'll be talking a little bit more about in our presentation. And then the different reasons why we use these different tests. The diagnostic are those STAR assessments that we use 3 times a year. The formative are the ones we're using in our classroom. The summative, the ITBS and ACT, as we talked about. And then the interim ones we use periodically throughout the year, and then our end of year unit, chapter test, or summative evaluations.
So why is any of this important? If you look at the 4 basic questions of why we are here as educators is, we have to identify by unpacking the standards and kind of going through all that is what we expect our students to learn in general. The next step of those 4 critical questions is assessments. How will we know if each student has learned? And some of the things to consider with these 3 different types of assessments, the state judges us in one way, and they evaluate the students in one way. Our instruction affects how that works, but how do we know if they're learning it in the classroom? So it's really a big picture of all of these assessment types working together. But that's why we're going through this today, and that's why it is important for you in your classroom.
Okay, so there's, we can separate out the assessments by looking at the purposes of them. We can separate them formative versus summative. So those summative assessments are the assessments of the learning. So they summarize student learning at a specific point in time, usually once a year, not designed to give the feedback to the teachers and students during the learning process. They're utilized to communicate statements of student learning status to those outside the classroom, to the school board, to the community, and they're administered to demonstrate accountability. So, like we said, the state uses those. The formative assessments are the assessments for the learning that happens inside the classroom. Acknowledges the critical importance of the students and teachers working as a team. Utilize strategies undertaken by teachers and by their students to provide information to be used as feedback to modify the teaching and learning activities in which they are engaged. So you're using it on the spot to drive your instruction. Provides continuous descriptive rather than evaluative feedback. school, if you think about, the blue in our chart talks about how often. So continuously or commonly, you're gonna do your formatives, your classroom assessments. And on this side, it talks to you about who's looking at those assessments. The students, the teachers, a lot of times you wanna share that out with your parents more often than, once a year. It wouldn't be a summative sharing to parents, they wouldn't appreciate that. Periodically, you do your summative benchmarks, and the people looking at that are the program level users, the teacher teams and school leaders. And then annually is your, the other summative piece, the accountability testing, the state testing, and that's your school district and state leadership. They're all looking at that piece of assessment.
So we have another quick survey, just to kind of see if you understand the differences between the three types of assessments that make up this balanced assessment system. So if you could open up yours and go through that for us. We want to see where our staff is currently on their understanding of the variety of assessments.
We're gonna be going through all of these in a little bit more detail. We're trying to get a kind of a snapshot of where you guys currently are and your understanding of these types of assessment. Got 7 responses so far.
That's
Kelly's on it.
All right, we're almost there. And we're at 9. All right. Okay. Let's see how you guys are doing at your knowledge on this.
So it looks like, I'm not gonna give the exact assessment right now because we're gonna talk to you and discuss about each different types, but it looks like we have a little bit of variety between some and only 2 between some, and then if you scroll over, where are we at? Sorry there. Looks like here we have a good understanding, and then there's still some variety within some of these assessments. So based on these results, we want to hopefully clarify some of this for you as a staff before we go into more professional development on how to implement some of these strategies in your classroom. So if we look at an overall timeline of when these assessments should be occurring, here's an example of something that can help you visualize. It's hard to see if you're further back, but basically instructional activities are happening all the time, and those are the ovals. Okay, instructional activities and formative assessments are ongoing throughout the whole year during your instruction. Formative assessments are also the green, so you can see how they kind of go back and forth. Between your instruction and formative assessments, they alternate. So you're doing both ongoing throughout the entire school year and providing the feedback from each. So that's what the purple arrows represent. And then you can see the unit tests. So a unit test or a chapter test occur after the learning. So that would be a summative. That's something after the students have learned the instruction, then you check for their understanding. Whereas formative, you're checking as you're going and getting that feedback to adjust that instruction. And then if we look at the benchmarks, that's typically your star, so you can kind of see the ongoing process between different intervals throughout the year. So a lot of schools do it at the beginning, the middle, and the end to see student growth, and that is what is also used in the balanced assessment system. So formative assessments. So based on what you thought, here are some of the examples to provide you immediate feedback to guide your instruction throughout the learning process. So questioning strategies. How many of you have used today's meet or a discussion board. So that could be a use of a formative assessment for questioning and discussions. Think, pair, share, which based on your results, you had a good understanding of that being a formative assessment. Using mini whiteboards, rather than it's just a quick assessment, when they do something on their whiteboard, they raise it up, you do a quick check, or it can be used as group activities as well. Exit ticket and different hand signals, thumbs up, thumbs down, however you want to use those. Those are ongoing every day throughout your instruction. The interim and benchmark assessments are why we are delivering the instructional information. So we're providing this not only to teachers and principals, but also you can provide this information to your students to show the growth. Your district administrators and even parents can see the results between the instruction. So based on some of this is STAR, Ames Web Math, because it's interval. Okay, it's done at a certain interval. Where students are starting and then the growth over time. You can identify the patterns for this, their strengths and maybe areas of need, and then implement different interventions that you might need, or talented and gifted programs also can be targeted with these benchmark assessments. And then your summative, measure the student growth after your instruction has been completed. So this is checking for their understanding after a specific unit or at the end of the year during this state assessment. So different things that may go into that are multiple choice, true, false, matching, fill in the blank, short answer. It's checking for that understanding within that summative assessment.
So, what are we doing here in our building? I'm gonna break it down through all three of those of how we're doing. The basic understanding and why it's called balance assessment is you truly need a balance of each of these assessments. Each one is important. You kind of think about the summative assessment. Well, that's really important to the state. That's really important to colleges on their applications and things like that. What's really important as teachers, probably more the formative. We're looking at day-to-day, lesson to lesson. Are these kids getting what we want them to get? So we're breaking it down here. How are we doing right now? The summative, we're using the ACT. Our goal obviously is 25. Our current average is 22. That's a growth by 1 since the last time we looked at this. So that's a great improvement. Obviously, these other assessment types, if we do what we need to do with them, we'll grow that even more. And that's obviously the goal we want to go towards. The interim tests or the benchmark tests, we use the STAR. What we're doing really well here, folks, is providing support for interventions or higher level kids. We're providing support through the scores we're seeing on the STAR exam. We're also celebrating and challenging kids. We are showing them their score. We're saying, hey, let's get to this in the winter. We're celebrating those successes, and we're monitoring improvement. So I think we're on the right track on the STAR exam. How can we dig a little deeper? The STAR exam has a lot of bells and whistles that we're not using right now that I think will help guide our instruction as we look to specific skill deficits or acquisitions on how they're doing. So that's a little bit of what we need to improve on in the interim. Formative assessments is really where we're going to focus, though. If you think of the balancing of assessments on a pyramid scale or an iceberg scale, whatever you want to think.